Tonight we are joined by a speaker we have not heard from before. We were to have as our in-person gift, our guest tonight was Eugenie Chan. However, she has had to postpone her visit because of an injury, but she has promised me that she will return in 2027. I guess I talked to her this past week and she said she wasn't even able to stand yet. So she's had a herniated discs. So joining us in July 2nd program will be Pamela Beldelis. We last heard from Pamela in 2023, so it's been a little while. She will be bringing us a program on American state papers, a research for early American research. A little more detail about what Pamela's program will be on. The American state papers contain legislative and executive documents from the early years of the United States government, covering the period from 1789 to 1838. And she will help us look into those records and see how they can be useful to you as a genealogy research. Then too, Pamela will touch on the use of the website Old3, which I believe is about newspapers.
Military records.
Military records,
Yeah.
okay. And using it in your research. Then lastly, in the back of the room, I have a sign-up sheet. We have 1 month left for after meeting refreshments. So if someone would like to show off their cooking skill or stopping off at Save Mart, we have 1 month yet that has not been filled with that. Sharon is providing the after meeting refreshments tonight. So our speaker tonight will join us from her home in Southern California. Jean Wilcox Hibben is a former Southern California college speech professor. She is a national speaker and author, a member of the DAR, former director and current family history consultant for the Corona, California Family Search Center. She's worked on background research for 2 genealogy television programs and was a host for podcasts on social history. A former board certified genealogist with over 45 years of research experience. She is a former board member of the Association of Professional Genealogists and past president of its Southern California chapter. First vice president of the Corona Genealogical Society, as well as the webmaster for that same organization. She's a participant on a number of other society boards. And Jean writes the anti-Jeff column for the Informer, which is the newsletter for the Jefferson County, New York Genealogical Society. Her website, circlemending.org, is also quite a chore in itself. Would you please join me now in welcoming Jean Wilcox Hibben?
Oh, I get tired listening to all of that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Are people able to hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
I'm not hearing.
We got
Yeah.
Yes,
You can hear me? Yeah?
yes, we're fine.
Oh, good.
Very good.
All right. And is my slide, my title slide up there so you can see it?
It is.
Yes. All right. These are the things that are so positive to me. It's great. I can then move right ahead into things. I'm going to take my picture off of this, but I'll keep my audio going for sure. And I can't figure out how to do that. So we'll just leave it as is. Okay, so the devil is in the details. It's interesting. I was watching I can't even tell you what it was. I don't remember it. It was probably a news broadcast of some sort, and someone used that phrase. It's been a long time since I've heard that phrase used. My mother used to say it. I think that what she was trying to get me to do was probably clean my room better than I was. Well, we're going to go ahead and take a look at how this works. Please do not take pictures or video this, but the recording is being made by the society, and I think they're going to put it on the members only page or something along those lines. Are there any other people besides me doing this from a distance? In other words, are there other Zoom people on?
No.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know.
Nope.
Yes.
There is?
No. Oh, okay. Then what I want to make sure people do is, would you please mute the microphones? That's, that way I get to be the only one heard. Now, that may or may not be a good thing. All right. Like I said, my mother used to say this to me. The devil is in the details. I didn't know what that meant when I was really young, but I like to look up phrases and find out where they really came from. And this means that small things in plans and schemes, they're often overlooked. Well, they can cause some serious problems later on. And some of those serious problems, I guess, we're likening them onto Satan's work or something like that. And let me tell you something about the word devil here. I want to make a disclaimer. I'm using the terms devil and demons as they're found in folklore and throughout mythology. I am in no way attempting to put a religious slant on the material presented here or disparage anyone's beliefs regarding that entity. So we're looking at this with a bit of humor, and it's okay to have a little humor when you're trying to do research and you're so frustrated with everybody that's not giving you what you want. So that's, we need to have humor. Let's face it. So we're going to have you hold the questions until the end. We'll probably have a few minutes to address them, but you can always email them to me. Now, my email address is on the handout, which I sent in, and if you do not have it or weren't able to get it, we'll take care of that at the end of things and make sure that you have a link for it. Well, after reviewing the whole program, we will cover those questions as we can. Are your ancestors waiting in genealogy purgatory for you to rescue them? Victims of missed minutia. The devil takes the form of detailed misinterpretation or missing data, and in our discussion today, these are going to be involving indexes, transcriptions, or abstracts. There you go. Databases, census records. Uh-oh, the wrong family. Abbreviations and codes, foreign languages. Not a great deal on that, but we're going to touch it briefly. Photographs, and, of course, headstone data. So, sometimes, and I have to admit that I did this when I started working with genealogical records, sometimes we settle for the information we find on an index. Here it is. It's got to be what I need. I don't need to look any further. So let's see how that can work out for me when I was doing the Genealogy Roadshow. This is one of the problems that I was having to untangle. I wanted to research David Kubik. Now, David had died, it says that's the birth indexes until 1995. David had died a few years before I was doing the research for his daughter. Now, his mother's name is listed on the birth record, which is logical, as Galassis. I can't even pronounce the thing. And I'm now wondering if we can trace, of course, the family. That's what we want to do. And I thought, well, I've got the mother's name, so I am going to find out where she lived, maybe a little more. I knew that she lived in San Francisco when David was born, but I kind of didn't think that that was where she lived her entire life. So I, of course, did what any of us would do, which is I punched it into a search engine, and I came up with the California Birth Index, which is what I started with, and that lists her right there at the top. Let me bring that up. Galassis. And I said, okay, well, this doesn't give me anything more. So I looked down to see the other people that are there, and I realized that no other name is spelled the same. However, we know that spelling in genealogy, and sometimes when people came to America, they didn't know how to spell their last names, or sometimes even their first names. So I thought, well, let me go a little bit further here, and I'm going to look in the census records for that same name, Galassis. And I found a few that has that different spelling that it doesn't quite match David's mother, but it's close. It's close. And what I saw that was most intriguing, besides the fact that these are people in San Francisco, which is what I was looking for, that this one individual came from Italy. Okay, now we're getting somewhere, because now I've got the idea that this is an Italian family. I can get records. This is very exciting. So I decided I'm going to now spring for the actual document. Now, the actual document, at least at the time I did this, was not available online, but happened to be in Northern California, a little bit further north from where you are. And I contacted a friend of mine up there and asked her if she would go and get that birth record for David. And she did. And it didn't come out too well. The copy's not so good, but I could still make out some of it. And it gave me the information that I really, really needed. And that is that David's mother's maiden name was Galasieska, not Galassis. I now have to start over again. I didn't think that was an Italian name, and it wasn't. You see, the California Birth Index shows only the first 8 letters of the surname. So if I don't know that information, I'm going to be going all over the place trying to find someone with a name that has only 8 letters in it, when it really should have more. So this is an important thing that I learned, and yes, I learned it the hard way. I'm grateful that it wasn't actually with this particular example. But what I learned, and then had to relearn and relearn, because sometimes I forget about reading the About section when we're looking up records. And I'm going to use some examples from Family Search, but some of these examples, they're screenshots from a while ago, and it's the same basic information anyway. All right, so I'm going to give you a different example here. I like to switch around so that you see that I'm not stuck in California. No, I go to Tennessee too. I love Tennessee. And I checked out the About section regarding Tennessee marriages and those records. And it gives me some information, but one of the most important pieces of information it gives me is this one: learn more. Now, I know that there are times where I'm in a hurry and I think I already know everything. And so I say, well, you know what? I don't have time to learn more. I'm going to go with what I've got here. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. So whenever I possibly can, I'm going to go to learn more. And when I do that, I get sent into the Family Search Wiki, which is amazing with references and ideas. And hey, here's some things you might want to know. So if I am going to learn more, I'm going to go to this part of that page that I just showed you, the top part. And I'm very intrigued with this one. Known issues with this collection. So this is going to list such things as there are only 8 letters in the names of California individuals, or something along those lines. It would also tell me if there are some documents that aren't available. Maybe a portion of the collection had been destroyed or accidentally damaged in some way. So I'm going to get the information about any problems with it. Plus, I can get information about what is in the record or records and how I might use that information. And it'll tell me also what is covered in the documentation. So this little section, which at first I thought, I don't need that, is like an angel. It's giving me the information that I need so that I can go ahead and not waste time looking for something that isn't there. Well, when I do go into the little more detail, I get the coverage table for the Tennessee marriages, and that assists me a great deal. Okay, so one way also to look these things up is to look for your county of interest. Not all counties may be included. Some may be only partially indexed or browsable, and that information will be in the problems with the collection or in the part where it talks about what is available there. The wiki and other materials tell about the content. Now, overlooking these, that can cost a lot of valuable research time looking for something that isn't there. Well, there's also a problem where we may take a transcription and have the belief, and I understand why, it makes sense because we may not have anything but a transcription, but have the belief that this is fully accurate and giving me all the information I can get. Now, I have family from Milwaukee, German, and grandparents got married in Milwaukee at the Catholic parish, and they had witnesses, and I sent where they had gone to church. I can't remember why, but I did. And so I wrote to the church and told them what I was looking for, and I was sent this, which is the transcript that was put together by someone there at the church. And it tells me some helpful things. That tells me about who the witnesses are. And it tells me a little bit more about the date that they got married. But it never occurred to me until I found the actual document. It never occurred to me that there might be things that are missing or wrong or incomplete. So once I got the microfilm, I could look at the actual document. And I looked at the first thing I thought was, that's awfully small for what I was sent. But then it's in Latin, and there's an issue with how much space you have. So it's crammed right in there. The day of 5 May, 1868, it was joined in matrimony, Johann Adam Hollander, 25 years old, legitimate son of, there's a plus mark, that means that the father is deceased, Franciscus Matthias, and deceased Anna Maria Hollander, born Menz, and Caroline Trapshoe, 24 years old, legitimate daughter of Ignati and Maria Trapshoe, born Netchen. Testifiers, young man Ludovicus Vergen and Karl Trapshoe. Well, now I look at that and I say, I think I've got some more information here that wasn't on what I was sent. So let's take a look. On the transcription, I get the English translations of all the names, which is nice, yeah, but the groom's name is not spelled as it is on the original document. The date and location of the marriage, the full name of the priest. The original document, well, it has the ages of the bride and groom with the spelling with an E, Hollaender, Hollander. The names of the parents. The groom's parents are both deceased. Then the witnesses are young people, not married. Now, I don't know about you, but I looked at that and I had a bunch of information that just might lead me to some more data. It did, and I've got a pretty good picture of that whole family. So I've disrobed another devil, and I'm ready to go to, well, let me just remind you, examining the original document could lead to identification of the bride and groom's birth records, supply hints about records of family members. Carl or Charles Trapshoe is the bride's brother, and there's a picture of him there, and can provide information to locate records for the parents, which it did. We want to kick that devil to the curb and look at those original documents whenever we possibly can. I know the temptation is just look at the abstract or transcription. It takes too much time to look at the whole thing, and anything important would be included by the indexer. Of course. Are you kidding me? Don't let him tempt you. Remember, indexers are our angels. They work, though, with templates, and those provide spaces for only specific things. Sometimes enumerators wrote things in the margins. There are no places on the transcription forms for the indexers to add the data. Wouldn't it be cool if these transcription templates had other interesting information for descendants included in all of those forms, and then we could maybe find a few other things as well. Well, I want to tell you about my grandmother, and actually, this is a family. I knew many of these people. Let me show you. This is our abstract, and this is in Milwaukee. And the head of the household is Hans P. Johnson, and his wife is Emma Johnson. Their daughter is Virginia Johnson. That's my mom. And sister-in-law, that's sister-in-law to the head of household, is Mamie Hollander. Now, immediately, folks want to take that information. That's the sister-in-law, must be the sister of the wife, Emma. In this case, that is true, but it's not always that way. So be careful about making assumptions. And they had a lodger in the household, Jeanette. But I have a question. Who owns the house? I mean, when you look at the head of household, we generally think that's the person who is the maybe the breadwinner, but also pays the mortgage or rent or whatever the case may be. And some people don't really care who owns the house. I, on the other hand, am nosy, and I want to know everything, particularly about a family whose the members there, many of whom I already knew or had known. So, in this case, the original record for this 1940s census is down at the very bottom of a page. So let me bring it up so you can see it here. In the margin, it says Miss Hollander, that's Mamie, owns 2852 North Farwell Avenue and lives with the Johnson family. But she's not listed as the head of household, because while she did work, she wasn't the breadwinner, and besides that, the only man in the house was Hans P. Johnson, and possibly she felt that her brother-in-law should have that honor or responsibility. I also want to point out that when we look at the document, we can see a check mark here, which says to us that this particular family is continued on the next page. Now, we don't find that in all the census records, and it would be wonderful if we did. But that's where the rest of the household is. It's on the next page. Well, many details are omitted when the indexing is done, and it's not because people are wanting to delete it. There's just no place to put it. So we need to remember to check one census against another, too. Sometimes data is different. And people lie. Well, let's take a look at this family. And this is not my family. This is a family I researched for Genealogy Roadshow. And let me tell you that when I share families that I've researched as clients or for the programs, I've always gotten their permission to share this. So the wonderful family that shared this or told me about this family, let me share it with you. The Sweetsers. Richard Sweetser, the dad. He's the head of the household. And the next person in line there is Estella, his wife. And then the oldest child is Minerva, their daughter. And then there are two more daughters. But we're going to work at those three at the top to start with at any rate. Now, Richard is 26. 26. Oh, he's kind of young, isn't he? He's 26 years old, and Estella is 25, and little Minerva is 6. Well, I've got some interesting information. I can fill in some dates. I can look at a few other things, but I'm going to go to the next census. The one I just showed you was 1900, so I'm going to look at the next federal census, which is 1910. And here we have Richard Sweezer with his wife Minerva and their daughter Stella. Let's take a look at their ages. Richard here is 48. This is 10 years later. Okay, we got a little problem with addition here, but it's carried right on through because Minerva, the wife, is listed as age 45, which is 20 years later than 10 years ago. Estella, who was 6, is now 16. Now, I hope some of you have realized that there's another problem here. So we're going to take a look and create a comparison table. And that helps us find these minutiae that are just so annoying once we find them and then try to fix it. So in 1900, the husband or father was Richard, and is age 26. The wife, mother, is age 25, and they were married 7 years. I'm glad to see that both of them had 7 years written down. Daughter is Minerva, age 6. In 1910, Richard is now aged 22 years. Estella, who then becomes Minerva, is 46, also aged, looks like 20 or 21 years. Married 17 years. Okay, that makes sense. That's good. And the daughter is Estella now, age 16, and that's the right amount of years. So this is a little confusing. And to tell you that it only got worse as we went through other documents, there are so many inconsistencies. What's accurate, if anything? A lot of investigation required. Why nobody saw that particular problem on Genealogy Roadshow, because we did not have enough time to go any further than we had gotten. We were all so confused. Okay, let's look at how the master manipulator manipulates ages, like we just saw. It's a 1930 census, federal census for Illinois. This is my grandfather, Lee A. Wilcox. His wife is Pauline. That's my grandma. Their son is Lee Roy. He always went by Roy, never went by Lee. And that's the son, who happens to be my father. And then we have Gertrude Miller, who's the mother-in-law. Now, that's mother-in-law to the head of household. Right? So that would be Lee's mother-in-law, and immediately we think must be Pauline's mother. And most likely it is. There are certain situations where it might not be. Maybe he'd been married before he married Pauline, and he just let his mother-in-law hang out from his first. I don't know. Just remember that drawing immediate conclusions. Well, I told you about that devil. You know, he sneaks around and really gets us. Well, it says here that Lee A. was born about 1886, Pauline about 1881. It says that Lee and Pauline were married between 1909, if she was 28, and 1912, if he was 26, because we look over here, we have Lee at age 44, his wife at 49, but when they got married, he was 26 and she was 28. And I'm not sure how they managed that, but there could be something really interesting I'd like to be advised of. Well, actually, they were married in 1911. Well, I'm going to compare the 1920 to the 1930 census and see where that gets me. So here we have Lee A., head of household, Pauline, Lee Roy, and then we have Gertrude Miller, the mother, it says. Now, I promise you, she was not Lee Wilcox's mother. She just wasn't. I won't go into the family problems, but she really was Pauline's mother. All right. Well, Leah was born about 1887, previously about 1886. Pauline about 1880, previously about 1881. Age difference between Leah and Pauline, 7 years, previously between 2 and 5. The cutoff date, now here's some more minutia that we need to remember. The 1930 cutoff date was April 1st. The 1920 cutoff date was January 1st. And to my recollection, that 1920 is the only federal census that used a January date. The others were April and June, or June. Pauline, by the way, was born in November 1879. And if I didn't already know that, I found out when I looked at the 1880 census, because children under the age of 1 were to be identified with what month and year they were born. And so I found out she was born in November 1879. So one way to beat Beelzebub is to create a table for each person on the census records. Now, I know that can sound like a whole lot of work, and you may not need to do it or want to do it for individuals, I was going to say that you don't care about, but for people that you maybe are not focused on at that moment. But I created a table for my grandfather, L.A. Lee Wilcox. And now in 1940, his mother's birthplace was not identified. But this material here in this column is what we're going to look at. In 1930, his mother was identified as being born in Kentucky. In 1920, she was born in Georgia. In 1910, it says she was born in Pennsylvania. And in 1900, it says she was born in Mississippi. Now, I also have an 1880, but it doesn't list my grandfather. And in 1880, she says she was born in Tennessee. I call her my great-grandmother from Miskatonic. And so far, that's the best I can do at finding all the information on her. Oh, let's look here. Believing that the document author was accurate is one of the things we tend to do, especially if it's somebody that we trust for whatever reason. So often records of other countries, the Catholic Church, for instance, or various repositories, put the name of the target individual in the margin. It's really kind of cool when I'm, I guess I don't do a whole lot of scrolling through microfilm, but whether I'm looking at a digitized image or I am looking at a microfilm, it's one way to kind of move through the records quickly. Sometimes, because sometimes an error occurs and the wrong name is inserted there, I learned I needed to slow down. Whose name? It might be the name of a witness. It might be the name of a parent. It might be the name of the person from the previous record. That's really funny when you see that. Okay, so here's an example of a misleading tag in margin. One of my friends that I was giving help with German brought this by the Family Search Center and said, "What is true on this thing?" And I said, I haven't seen that much. I had some. Now, here's Bernard Jacob Kirchmer, and he married Magdalena Schmidt. At least that's what it's telling us there. All right. And I translated to Bernard Jacob. Well, let's find out a little bit about this family becoming a family. It's a 1783. It's the 31st day of August that they were married in the church. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. Who was married? The adolescent Johann. And Johann who? Well, we still got Johann Kirchmer, but his father is Bernard Kirchmer. So it's kind of confusing. And if I was looking for Johann Kirchmer and was going through the record quickly, I wouldn't have stopped here because I'd be looking at the margin. So it means taking a little more time, but you may find more ancestors. Oops. Don't rely on what is in the margin. The text may not match what's written inside, so we need to remember if it says born John Smith and we read it, and it says Peter Smith was born to John and Mary Smith. Now we have to go back and do a little more research. How about foreign languages? My mother had a stack of letters from Bohemia, and when I told her I was doing genealogy, she gave them all to me. I was excited until I looked at them and thought, I can't read this. Sometimes it's easy to ignore something we don't understand, or we can't put it into a space that it works. So a quick way to burn up your genealogy project in the files of Dante's Inferno is to ignore letters, especially ones that are that long. I know it doesn't look easy to read, and I was able to have it translated by two different individuals, and both of them came up with almost the exact translation. I'm just going to read a very short bit here to describe you the happiest, dear sister. To describe the happiness which was brought to us by your letter, I think I do not have to tell you at all. I think you are convinced of our inner feeling from father and us for you and your family. See, they had come to America and then wrote back home to say, we're here and we're safe. And this lovely lady who wrote this letter added, it surely was the guardian angel of our unforgettable mother who saved you and was over you, and will do this in the future too. On your way, you are going now. Her body is dead, but her spirit is still living, and the blessing of a good mother is building houses for the children. Well, when I got this, I've got to go back pretty much an entire generation, because I was able to find the documents for that good mother. I finally had a date to work with, which was the death date. So instead of burning the letters, I found information about the mother's death. She died on the 13th of January, 1849. And we figure she was already dead before that family set sail for America. And I say that because I would believe if the mother had died after my ancestors or my great-great-grandmother had come to the United States, that the letter would have been a little bit different. I hate to tell you this, but that's sort of thing. So find a translator. It's worth it. Where do you find a translator? Well, this is not that would be straying a little bit too much, but talk to me later and I'll give you some ideas. But beware, the devil sometimes takes a pleasing shape. I want to tell you about William Freeman. William Freeman lived in California up in Sonoma County. Now, I got a phone call one night from a man whose surname was Freeman. And he said, when I answered the phone, he verified that I was who I was, and he said, cousin. And I said, yeah, okay, what line are you coming through? I have a lot of Freeman ancestors, but I don't have a lot that went to California. In fact, I don't have any that went to California, as far as I knew. And he told me that they'd gotten a genealogist to look it up, and they found all the information. And he told me about the William Freeman there in California. And there's the family, William and his wife, Sarah, and then we have a whole bunch of kids there. And I'm looking at the occupation of William Freeman. He's a ship carpenter. Okay, well, this is quite interesting. I don't identify with it. It does say he was born in New York, and he's 52 years old. So now I know where I'm starting, but I asked my not quite cousin on the phone how he got his start. And like I said, they hired a non-thorough researcher. Sadly, when you hire a researcher, it doesn't, the person usually doesn't have, I'm not very thorough, but hire me anyway. That generally doesn't come up that way. So they really didn't know if the professional genealogist was going to be thorough. And I looked the data. William Freeman of California, he was born about 1818 in New York, according to both the 1870 and the 1880 census records. His wife was Sarah, who was born in Ohio. All of their children were born in California. the oldest in 1851. So he had to have left New York before that time. No, at least his wife had to have. A professional genealogist was hired to find the parentage, and this individual checked old church records in New York and found a, a little gem. This is the Lutheran St. Paul's Church in the town of Minden, the Geisenberg Church. These records are transcribed by the New York Genealogical and Biographical Society and edited by Royden Woodward Vosberg. He's done many church records throughout New York. I believe some in New Jersey, and I think he did some in Pennsylvania. If you are interested in looking at some of the materials that he has worked with the New York Society, can go to Family Search and look for author Royden Woodward Vosberg and might find exactly what you're looking for. A lot of my family are in those books. Well, here's what was located. William Freeman. It says his father is Edward Freeman. He was born on the 14th of July, 1817, and gettoved or christened on the 20th of September, 1817. Edward's wife is Rennie, whom we would interpret as probably being William's mother. It's not absolutely clear here, but we can at least research it in some way to determine whether that's right. Okay, so maybe there's more than one William Freeman born in New York. I decided to check how many William Freemans born in New York between 1815 and 1825 might be located in the United States in 1850. This is before my William's first child was born. 24 of them. That's not that many. One is in California. I wonder who it is. 5 are in New York, 4 of them in New York City. How can we be sure that the one located in the church record is the right one? Which is what the genealogist that looked this up was saying. This is the right guy. This is your guy. Well, there are a few other hints here, one of them being the name Edward Freeman. So I did some research on Edward Freeman, and I found him. You know, some people believe that our ancestors are watching us as we're being deceived, and they're seeing what we're doing, and they're yelling things like, please don't go there, it's the wrong place. Unfortunately, we get so excited with whatever we find, we may not listen. Edward Freeman's will is in the courthouse in Watertown in Jefferson County, New York. And he's got listed here, April 1856 is when the will was proved. And his living children are Abram Freeman, Peter Freeman, John Freeman, Marion Freeman, Hannah Freeman, Polly Emerson, wife of John Emerson, don't you know? Francis Freeman, Isaac Freeman, William Freeman of Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County, Michigan, and Irina Wilcox, who's my second great-grandmother. Oh, so the question, did William Freeman really go back and forth between Michigan and California so that he could maintain a second family? Don't ask me which one you would think is second family. Well, in 1870, he's on that census in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and it lists him as a wagon maker. It says he was born about 1820. His wife is Susan, who was born in New York, and the children, the oldest born in 1848, were both born in Michigan. Only 2 children to the family, 1 girl and 1 boy. And the boy had, I think, 2 children, and they didn't have any offspring. There's no way that the person who phoned me up and believes I'm his cousin could possibly be connected to this William Freeman. Well, again, a comparison table. California William was born between 1816 and 1822 in New York State. And Michigan William was born the 14th of July, 1817 in Warren, Herkimer County, New York. California William married Sarah Ann Parrish in 1852 in Sonoma County. And Michigan William married Susan Spofford the 27th of October, 1845 in Jefferson County, New York. Her family was also there. It's a very well-known family. I don't think that she would be messing around with a bigot if she had to. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I shouldn't get too quick to judge. California William worked as a carpenter and mill worker, while Michigan William was a wagon maker in Ypsilanti all his life and was very well known in the town. The first child born to California William was in 1851, and the last in 1880. There were 13 all told. But Michigan William and his wife had just the 2 children, born in August in 1847 and July 1849, both in Michigan. And now, when did they die? Well, California William died in June or July, 1889 or 1899. But burial location is unknown, and I did scour a whole lot of records and cemeteries in the area in Sonoma County, and it's like he just disappeared. Michigan William, on the other hand, died in 1882 in Ypsilanti, and he's buried in Highland Cemetery in Ypsilanti, and I have pictures of his home and of his tombstone. Does that mean that that's a proof? Not exactly, but it makes me a little more comfortable when I have to tell this nice man that we aren't cousins, but I'm happy to pass along information I found. So create comparison charts before spending any more time researching the wrong line. I know. Sometimes people have 2 identities and 2 families at the same time. But in the mid-1800s, it wouldn't be probable for a man to split his time across more than 2,000 miles. So watch for the red flags that indicate missed minutia. Even when you're working in just one location, sometimes everyone in town seems to have the same name. Perhaps you've experienced that. We've got this John Smith and that John Smith and this John Smith, and how do we know which is which? There are a variety of ways. Extinguish that hellfire. Try looking at the details. Occupation can sometimes help, but not always. Or signature. The differences of the signature. Francis Matthias Hollander was my great-great-grandfather. Well, one of the Francis Matthias Hollanders. And here is a signature of Franz Matthias Hollander. And here's one of Franz Matthias Hollander. And here's one of Franz Matthias Hollander. And here's one of just Franz Hollander. Well, I look at that and say, well, if I can figure out which 2 are the same, that may at least eliminate one situation. Let me go back there. Yeah, which 2 are the same person? Here we go. This Franz Matthias Hollander and that Francis Matthias Hollander are the same person. Of course, I also used ages and birth years to help with that, and it worked out pretty well. As for the other Franz Matthias Hollander, yes, related. How? I'm not exactly sure right now because I can't remember that. But anyway, you get the idea that the signatures are just wonderful, I think, to help us to separate people from the others with the same name. Now, I also think that having a chart of the signature, if I asked you about your signature today, is it anything like it was when you were, say, 13 years old? I know mine doesn't even come close. John Adam Hollander came to America in 1856, and that's his signature. And he had an umlaut over the A, but then he dropped it. And we have all of the different signatures. Now, sometimes he writes it as Adam, and sometimes as John Adam, and sometimes as John, and every now and then the initials. The reason for that is, what is the document he's signing? If he's signing a letter to family or friends, it's more likely to be Adam. If he's filling out a form for official reasons, then it's more likely to be J. Adam or John A. or something along those lines. And we can see in 1907, his signature wasn't quite as good as it had been, but after that, his signature was an X. because he'd gone blind from glaucoma. I want to warn folks, when you see that your ancestor's signature is an X and it has a little note next to it, this is his mark. Do not assume the person is illiterate. It's possible he's like my great-grandfather and was blind. But we should be able to trust our next of kin, don't you think? Oh, it would be so nice if we could. And death certificates are one of the first places we have this kind of an issue where we want to trust the person that's filling it out. We expect that person to be a loved one, or that the information has come from something that the deceased had written prior to passing away, of course. My mother died unexpectedly, and she was in a hospital. My dad wasn't expecting it at all. And he kind of forgot a whole lot of things. But he was the one that gave the information. Would have asked me, but no, he filled it out. And he identified my mother's parents as Hans Peter Johnson and Lala Trapshoe. Well, my brother called me up and he said, "Who is Lala Trapshoe?" I said, "Well, there is no such person. Where on earth would you get that name?" And he said, "That's what Dad said Grandma's name was. Wasn't it Emma Hollander?" I said, "Yes, it was." He says, "Well, where did this thing come from?" Well, Lala was her nickname in the family. And my guess is that my dad probably called his mother-in-law Lala, because he certainly wouldn't call her by the first name. That would be impertinent. And he certainly wouldn't call her Mrs. Johnson. That would be very stupid. And definitely he would not call her mother, mom, ma, or any form of that. When I came along, when my brother came along, and then I came along, he was calling our grandmother Grandma, the same as many people in the household were calling her Grandma. And I was kind of lost. Well, Trapshoe, of course, was her mother's maiden name, at Lala's mother's maiden name. So that's how we got that. Follow up on data, even when it comes from an alleged authority. My dad meant well, but instead of asking for some help on that, he kind of jumped the gun. Even the nicest people can make mistakes. Double-check information from others. Language demons. Oh, how about misinterpreting abbreviations? We're getting to the end here, but let's talk about a couple of these different situations. There is a place called Doe, and a large number of people are from Doe. Here's some of my Trapshoe family, and it says there that the head of the household was born in Bohemia, but his wife was born in Doe, and the next two children were born in Doe. But then the third from the youngest is born in Wisconsin, but the other two are born in Doe again. I guess they went back. No, Doe is the abbreviation for ditto. Now, if you go into Family Search or Ancestry or MyHeritage and you enter a place, Doe, to see if there are any people that are found living there, you'll find a great number of them. And I know we laugh about it, but it's not a common abbreviation for ditto to us, at least today. But how about the unks? Do you have any unks in your family? That's another one. Put that name into Family Search or into Ancestry and see how many unks are out there.
Unknown.
Once upon a time, the ancestor Noah and his wife Liz, MNU, completed paperwork for his valid pension. Where he was to put his mother's name, he entered Unk. For many years thereafter, the descendants of this former soldier searched in vain for their Unk line. They looked in CA and NCA, but to no avail. Do you have unks in your family too? They may be devils in disguise, just trying to trick you. Unk is unknown I couldn't come up with what it was. It's unknown. So they didn't know the name, and it becomes a name of its own. MNU is middle name unknown, and it's not an invalid pension; it's an invalid pension. Well, if you're looking at using abbreviations, be very careful in using, well, California. I bet many of you use the CA as an abbreviation. But you know, not too far from where I live, there's a place called Ontario in California. But it's very easy to get it confused. And I read a thing from a travel agency trying to convince people there was a really good deal on a flight to Ontario. This is from New York, I think. He said, need to go to Ontario because it's a great place to go. And they put in a whole lot of information about it. And I looked at it and I said, yeah, that's the Canada one. This flight isn't going there. That could create some problems. What would someone name his child Gnu after an animal? That's given name unknown. And there are understandable confusions. DR is more likely to stand for debtor, not necessarily doctor. Of course, it depends on what it is, what kind of a document you work with. Anno means year, not anonymous. OC means Orphans Court, not Orange County, as well as a few other things, as a matter of fact. Don't ignore the letters on the documents. They're not placed there randomly or without purpose, and it may open up a whole new world for your research. Now, some others it's helpful to know. Inst is instant in the same month, whereas ult is ultimo, it's in or of the previous month. 7-ber is September, 8-ber October, and 9-ber November, even though we think of the 7th month as being July and the 8th month as being August, and the 9th is September. But that's a whole different program to talk to you about calendars. Just know that 7-ber is not July. Oh, and 10-ber or X-ber is December. And MN is no middle name. And LS is locus sigilli, meaning the locus of the seal. A lot of people think it means legal signature. And so many more. It would take an entire presentation just to scratch the surface. Suggestion. Verify anything you don't know for certain. See the handout bibliography for some helpful resources. And sometimes I just go into the Google or something and put in what it is I'm looking for. And sometimes I find it and sometimes I don't. And don't overlook codes. Sometimes they're just check marks for tally purposes. But sometimes they can provide keys to the most important information. The CDC has developed the coding and classification of causes of death in accordance with the 10th revision of the International Classification of Diseases. It's called the ICD. And tables, new tables come out every about 10 to 20 years. If you are interested in these and don't have any luck looking on Google, I guess, by all means, my genealogical society, coronagensoc.org, on its hits and helps page has code conversions for the CDC's classification. It may also be on the handout. I can't remember if I did that, but here we see from the first revision on down to the 10th revision. By the way, there is an 11th. There had to be an 11th because of COVID. Like I say, ICD is a system of categories to which morbid entities of either external or pathological cause. In other words, it's the cause of death. Okay? Let's take a look what I'm talking about. Cynthia Richardson, a good friend of mine, a genealogist who used to be with Jen Lighton, has shared some examples with me. Here's one. Here's a person that died in, the code on this death certificate is 43. Not every death certificate is going to have a code for death. But this one is, this is 1918, which means the table I'd use would be the last one revised before the date of death. So that's the 1910. And when I look it up, I find 43 is cancer of the breast. Now, here's another one. This doctor or whoever wrote it down was much neater. This is in 1933, I think, and the child was 2 days old. The code is 194, and the cause of death was inattention at birth or other and unstated forms of accidental violence. Photos. Just like letters, they can provide all kinds of great information. Are the photograph imps trying to hide your family? I hope not. My parents both had German relatives, like I said. And when they discovered they both had a whole lot of pictures from all of their relatives, they took the German pictures and put them all in a box and labeled them German pictures and handed it to me when I told them I was doing genealogy. And now I had a box of all these pictures and I had no idea what went with which family. So I turned them over and I sorted them by photographer. And this guy was in a lot of them. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce these things except for the townlets. Thankfully, somebody in the family wrote down that this is a picture of Augusta Hartman, who was born laser. And just from that alone, I was able to connect a whole bunch of pictures, which was kind of neat. Well, from writing to pictures in every language and document, tell the truth and shame the devil and fight him to the grave. Here's a grave, missing or hidden minutia on headstones. This is from Margaretha Trapshoe, born Lorenzen. Now, all the information is not visible on the stone. I had to pull away the weeds, cut them off so that I could see exactly what the rest of the data was. That was her birth date. So it may be worth it. Take a little scissors with you when you go to the cemetery. So it's your choice. We can do it the easy way. Remember, potentially filled with errors, and redoing the stuff or trying to start over is kind of hard, I think. So I suggest the harder way may actually be the easier way. It certainly is the accurate one. And I went just a bit over what I planned, but if I can answer questions and they'll let me, I will happy to do it.
Does they have any questions for her? You know how to watch all those little details and you're gonna get them all straight. I guess the biggest thing is pay attention to all those little different things that you see and you're going through records, because it's not just pen scratch, it's there for a reason.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes
Sometimes I've talked to genealogists who say that those things are just put there to confuse the next generation. Yeah.
I know I've seen a lot of things on census records, and that's probably one of the things that you're studying census records. Maybe you need to see if those mean something to the census taker, and they should therefore mean something to you.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I have a question. I will closer.
Yeah, maybe it's you know better than this.
I can look down here. I don't want to. He's up on the camera. Can you hear me?
I can.
Perfect. Thank you
I
so
can
much.
hear you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I don't know if this is too in the weeds with it, so feel free to direct me if it is, but I had a question about when you can't find any documents, and just wanting your professional opinion on where would you go next? Specifically, like I have great grandparents where there just wasn't any documentation for stuff. And I feel like my research has just stalled. So just wanting to know, what would you do in that case?
Well, the first question I have is, are you certain that there aren't records? Let me tell you what I'm talking about. William Freeman from California, I could never find records for him. I found him on the census records, but I really couldn't find much else. I believe that he left New York, went to California, and changed his name. many, many, many people in California were from someplace else. And in fact, Carl Sandburg has a very good song about that. What was your name in the States? And yeah, sometimes people change their names, and it's going to be very hard to find those people or records on them. Now, if you're pretty sure that it's the right name, you can't find it, have you looked in the newspapers? Because that is a great resource. But I tell you what, why don't you email me and let me ask you a few questions and see if I can help out. All right?
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'll email
Happy
you
to.
later.
Okay, good.
Anyone else have any other questions?
I'd like to know what they do with people that are cremated and scattered. How do they follow?
How to follow records of people that are cremated and scattered.
I'm afraid if that's a question for me, I'm afraid I didn't hear
How,
it. So,
yeah, how if different family member, whatever might have been cremated and their ashes scattered, how would you find any record of that? Is there any notation anywhere of that?
that's a fabulous question. I wondered that myself because that's what my husband wanted. Was it was unofficial, so it's not like we gave it to the Navy to have it scattered at sea or that it's in a vault somewhere. It was, well, don't even tell you where he went, but the matter of there is nothing that has been recorded. I did not put it in a newspaper. It was in a couple of blogs or posts so that people knew what was happening. But that is not as solid as a permanent record to find out. I have no idea, and that's becoming more and more the norm. So it is definitely something to think about. I do know that when I turned in my husband's death certificate, or they gave me something to finish off with, and one of the things was location of the remains, or words to that effect. And I had not made up my mind at that point, because my husband and I discussed a number of things. So I never filled that part out. And nobody came back and said, wait a minute, you have to fill this out. So it might be there on the death certificate, or it might not.
Anyone else? Now's your chance. You go home and go, or do your research, and there was a little mark, and you'll be thinking about this and said, oh, what does this mean? So. Well, there's no further questions. We certainly thank you, and a lot of food for thought, I think, there when you're doing the research.
I told you you're going to be up all night long now. I hope not. Well, thank you very much for your kind attention and your accolades. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you very much too.